Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
there are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm honored that I can start the week out, with the good company of Mr. Dennis Tibbetts, and a few minutes to share with him. Being his company, he sets the tone for me for the week. I invite you to be a part of the discussion as we tell you about a very, very wonderful opportunity for the community to come out. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. And in the studio, the excellent company of Mr. Dennis Tibbetts joins us. Hey, thank you very much, sir. Not just for your time this afternoon, but for your continued service to our country and the various hats that you wear. And as I hope you don't mind me sharing, I think as a community, we increasingly can look to others, not because necessarily we have deference for elderly people. I won't in every which way, shape, or form or fashion say that you're old. I'm not saying that at all.
Well, my dad used to say he was on borrowed time. I just started borrowed time, but I want to borrow plenty more.
Well, I pray that the Great One certainly gives you many decades, because you remind us of the importance of the Scripture talks about who much is given, much is required, and the more we give, I believe the more we get to give.
Well, most people know I grew up in Jamaica, and even before I came to Cayman to live, I was involved with the Junior Chamber movement. My whole life has been around, Lions, JCs, other organizations that serve. As a matter of fact, I was co-chair of the cleanup committee when the Queen came here in 1983. So, Colonel Patton's wife, Cecile, was the chairman.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing community work all my life, and I love it,
That's something that I'm glad you shared that, because I noticed that in our community, we have that spirit of service. Many people, I think, confuse being of service and servitude. It's not the same thing. But if you are a servant leader, if you're a person who has a heart to serve, I call him a friend. I mean, he's much older. I think it was great advice that he gave me. I think it was great advice. Maybe you can tell me now, all these years, if it was wrong. He said, you and your wife, you get married, you serve her in everything, no matter what it is, physical, financial. You be a servant to her, she be a servant to you, in that sense. And I mean, he was much more eloquent. But if you put each other, first, then you both would be, first.
Well, that's good advice, but if you follow the Bible, what the Bible says
about
it. But what I've found, right, I don't really look for anything in return. Right. I just love to give and serve. The seafarers, for instance. My dad was a seafarer. He was I think he was the first Caymanian captain with National Bulk. And even though we grew up in Jamaica, he still shipped out of Jamaica. So when I finished university, I said, let me do a little stint there before. And then I got hooked on it because I wanted to be like him, as the older of three sons. And unfortunately, I was doing all of the necessary things, studying and blah, blah. But before I even got to take my third mate's ticket, I had an accident on the ship, and that was the end of my sea career. but I was grateful for the 5 years or so that I spent there, because, as a matter of fact, I went on a ship with him one time. I was getting off of another ship, so I figured, I'd just be his guest. Little did I know I had to get up 7 o'clock in the morning like anybody else.
You're lucky.
The only good thing about that little 15-day trip was that I got to stay in the hospital room instead of staying back out, But I had to do my chair.
Yeah, you're lucky you didn't have to work much harder,
Well, I had to, in a sense. Subconsciously, I had to. Not that he demanded it, but...
No. But that's the thing, you see, they, by example, they lead, and I think that's what I really admire with the seafarers. The example, the fact that even though they can regale us with the stories back then, they're still working today. Not just to support themselves, like some may have to do, but they're working to promote the community, they're working to help others.
Yeah.
And it's that, I call it that community spirit, that sense of service that we have in our society. It bodes well when we look at the hospitality sector, and we were ambassadors within the sector. But it also, whether it's a community, wide cleanup because of some, visit by royalty, or whether it's an initiative to say, listen, too much trash is accumulating, or whether it's the PTA, whether it's the Lions, there's always somebody of service.
Yeah, I might say something that I might be putting my foot in my mouth, but even though we are serving the community, trying to help as best we can, sometimes, especially right now, we're going through a period where we don't think that we're properly recognized by this government. Well, let me not say this government, by government per se, But we still trot on, we plow on because it's something that is near and dear to our hearts.
Right.
We just had two seamen passed away. One yesterday morning, and one day before, and one. And it's since I've been president, I've got the council to change a few of the articles of association to. One of them was to make me president for 2 years instead of one. I hope I don't regret it. But another one was to make membership available to children of seafarers, because even though we have a lot of members, they're all between 70 and 90.
But that's the thing, and when you said government, again, I defer to you for many reasons, but your expertise, your experience. But I think as a society generally, all of us, Caymanians included, the corporate sector included, all of us collectively, I don't believe we show enough appreciation. Yeah, we're mindful, yeah, we're grateful, we say things, we contribute, sometimes what seems to be, make some sort of invaluable contribution, but we don't do what I think we can and should.
It brings to mind something that I witnessed about 3 Saturdays ago. Unfortunately, it was the funeral of a widow of a deceased. But I think she had like 5 sons and 5 daughters or whatever. But one of them especially, he spoke. And he said that he remembers when he had to take his bicycle ride out to the Georgetown post office to pick up the allotment that was sent to his mother. And he also said that it was only $100, but his mother stretched that for the whole tenner. It's nowadays people just wake up and see something. Oh, I could buy that. Yeah. In those days, it was a lot different. The woman especially. That's why right now we're trying to get the widows and the first wife, because so many of them married 4 or 5 times. So we're working on different things, but. My main reason today is to promote tomorrow,
yes, sir,
which is the International Seafarers Day. So I see you have a...
Yeah, I have a photocopy, a black and white copy, because I mark it up. And there was a color copy, and I know Miss Susan treasures, and she keeps these things. So that's why it looks so much better than my black and white copy. And I wanted to get the color copy. I won't... And Susan will tell me, hold up and pretend like I'm on, one of those game shows. But it is.
Well, you can. I mean, I don't think anybody can read it, but it's there.
All right, but
it's International Seafarers Day.
So we're holding up for you on radio. You look very closely now. If you're on YouTube.
Yeah, if you're on radio, you're not going to see it.
Yeah, Miss Susan reminds me that we're on. Okay, hold up again, Mr. Denison. We are speaking to Mr. Denison Tibbetts, and we're telling you about the tales of Cayman Seafarers. It's a historical discussion in honor of International Seafarers Day. And if you're watching us on YouTube, Susan has the flyer. There you go, Mr. Denison. Now, what she wants you to do in the next break, she'll get you stand in the corner on one foot with over your head. No, she's not. She didn't say that.
Last time I did that was in the physics class.
I had to do it for another class. No, but tomorrow, I mean, tell us about it, because I'm excited to learn more.
Well, actually, the seafarers themselves, we're gonna have an entertainment day for the seafarers and their wives, and even widows of seafarers who are passed on, from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. We're going to have dominoes, table tennis, cards, and we have a special DVD to show. Most of you, I'm sure you remember Ernest Hemingway. He wrote a book called The Old Man and the Sea. We're going to have that. And then Miss Reva Manderson, she's going to be showing how to do the thatch work. And Miss Adonia Barnes, she does these quilts. So all that will be on display. Amongst other things, we're going to have finger foods from 9 until 3 in the afternoon. And then we take a break, and that's when this thing comes in. It's actually being put on by the National Trust in collaboration with the seafarers. It says here, The Tales of Cayman Seafarers, a historical discussion in honor of International Seafarers Day. Come here, seafarer Kim Jackson from West Bay, share about his treasure hunting expeditions. Unfortunately, they have me as a speaker. I don't know what I'm going to say yet, but and then 2 other people. That starts at 6:30 until 8 o'clock in the night. So we have a really full day prepared. And of course, with the evening thing, anybody can come. You know, there's a small entrance fee. I won't bother to mention it.
Contribution.
Contribution. And it'll be shared, the contribution will be shared between the National Trust and Cayman Seafarers. So we have a full day planned for the seafarers, and in the evening, anyone can come.
Yeah, man. Well, when we come back from the break, I want you to tell us more, because I remember, was that earlier this year? It must have been. It couldn't have been last year. You were sort of telling us that looking forward to this day, some of the things you so that forward thinking, that vision, and the planning. And the day is tomorrow, so we get a chance to tell more. It's going to be at the Seafarers Hall, and get people to understand.
Yeah, the Seafarers Hall, Victory Avenue, and
what's that?
Shamrock.
Shamrock, yeah, going that way.
Well, I don't like to say it, but it's right opposite the brewery.
Well, a ship coming to port, the bar wasn't far down the road.
I know.
Maybe it's.
I got some tales that I'm thinking about telling tomorrow when I have to talk.
You know what? We have to record those.
Well, I hope they do, because it's always good to reminisce about old times. You know.
Indeed, sir. All right, Mr. Denison Tibbetts, the president of the Cayman Seafarers Association. When you come back, we'll have a chance to chat with him more specifically about tomorrow, as we talk about International Seafarers Day and the event at Seafarers Hall. I know it's a school day for some, a work day for others, even civil servants, but it's an important part of our day, and as we celebrate Cayman.
Part of the Caymanian history.
As we see that, me and Mr. Dennis are almost on the same page. You imagine that? I'm getting smarter just sitting by him. As we celebrate Cayman, I was going to say, this is an important part of our history. So maybe we can find time to go across tomorrow. I mean, Tuesday, cabinet meets. Not important. Maybe, I shouldn't say that. Susan said, Susan's like, boy, you threatened on tonight today.
I'll tell you something about that when we come back.
When we come back? Yeah. All right. Well, I'm honored to have a few more minutes of the company of Mr. Denison Tibbetts. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Sometimes things just don't go as planned. That's why you need Contractors All Risk Insurance from Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Ensure you're covered in the event of property damage and third-party injury or damage claims during your construction projects. And with Fidelity Insurance Brokers, you can be sure you are getting competitive pricing and superior customer service. Call us today for a free quote. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Wow, it seems I buy a battery every year.
Oh, for real? You should buy your car battery from Vantman. Their batteries are tough. I have a 3-year warranty on mine.
Oh, I know that trick. I take it back and they charge me a percentage of the price.
Hear me out, bro. Not at Vamp Bobo. You can get a 3-year full warranty, no charge. And if they install it at Vamp, it includes free towing and jumping service. And let me tell you, you will never have to get your hands dirty changing no battery.
Get Motorcraft Max or Plus battery for 20% off when it's installed by the service department at Vamp Motors on Walker's Road. Now that's a deal you can get charged up about. Vamp Motors, keeping you on the road.
Extended through June. Traffic congestion is bad for your mental health, bad for your wallet, and bad for the environment. Did you know that Cayman's carbon emissions per capita are nearly 4 times that of Europe, according to worlddata.info? Empty car seats are a wasted resource and contribute to traffic congestion. Carpooling is socially and environmentally friendly and can save you up to $1,000 per year in fuel and upkeep. Visit the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure Facebook page for more tips on energy-efficient commuting and be an energy advocate.
Hi, my name is Neraya LeBlanc. I am the minister and evangelist to the West Bay Church of Christ on 24 Batabano Road. I would love to take this opportunity to invite you to experience God's family at West Bay for yourself. We are a caring congregation that strongly believes in reaching out beyond ourselves to spread the gospel of Christ. We also take great pleasure in ministering to the needs of our people in our community. As God's called out kingdom people, we are in the business of transforming lives for the Master's use. For more information, you can visit our website at westbaycichurchofchrist.org or call us at 946-9294 or 917-1809.
Declaring the word of the Lord.
Cayman Islands Church of Christ presents Word of the Lord.
Word of the Lord, heard Sundays at 6:30 p.m. on Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. And we have a few more minutes with the excellent company of the President of the Cayman Islands Seafarers Association, Mr. Dennis Tibbetts. And we're talking about, an important day tomorrow as we celebrate International Seafarers Day.
Yes.
And Mr. Dennis and I sometimes say things in jest, my comment just earlier about tomorrow's Tuesday, just cabinet on. But I think all of the cabinet members, all of the politicians, all of Cayman understands that we are where we are because of the service and sacrifice of our seafarers, and thankfully we have a strong love and respect for our seafarers. It's part of who we are.
Well, it's unfortunate that some people don't think that.
Well,
but,
in time.
And here again, I'm serving as president, but I refer to my dad all the time because that's all he did for 48 years. And it was because of that why he was able to take his family to Jamaica. Because in Cayman Brac, when I was a boy, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have running water, we didn't have a doctor, we didn't have nothing. So when I was in Standard 6 for all this 3 years, he decided to take us to Jamaica so we could.
Standard 6.
So it's because of all of that.
I haven't heard that in a while. Yeah. If I could just, and we will go to the phone in a second, just for people as they're listening that they understand. We look at Cayman now. We even look at Cayman in the year 2000. We may even look at Cayman in the year 1980. But even if we are conscious of what it was in 1970 coming forward, let's just say the last 50 years, even 60 years as we look at our, celebrating Cayman's constitution and the coat of arms. But Jamaica was British Jamaica, the biggest.
We were dependent on Jamaica.
The biggest island, the British outpost in this part of the world, right? Significant sort of their central strategic location, doing all the stuff. But for Cuba, probably Jamaica was probably the most advanced, developed part in this part of the world.
When I went to Jamaica, Caymanians were treated as like a Jamaican. We didn't need no permit and all that kind of thing. Not until when they got independence and things started to change. But I went there before independence.
Right. Yeah. That's what I ask you to first understand that it was all one family. It was the British.
We used the Jamaican pound.
It
the
was
currency there. So
all right, we do have.
The reason why I went back to that was because even though I went to sea, it was in a different capacity. I wasn't one of those original seafarers that helped to build this country. Well, I mean, I helped to build my little part of it, but it's the older people like my dad and Captain Ned. I called Ezra yesterday to offer condolences, but I didn't get him. But Ezra, if you and Jerry are listening, it's not an opportune time, but I have to offer condolences because I knew Captain Ned pretty good. So, but it's people like them, that I like to project because they were the original seafarers. We came along after and we did our little part, but nothing like those first people.
And they had it,
Life had it hard.
They had it, yeah. I tell people anyway.
You have a call, is it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go to our phones as we enjoy the good company of Mr. Dennison. Good afternoon. Welcome you on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, Ms. Susan, and Mr. Dennison. Good afternoon. How you all doing?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Filling call. How are you, sir?
Yes, sir.
How's the brack?
Doing okay. The brack, it's severe temperatures, hot sun, and we have the major problem with the seaweed on the south coast of the island. Ice stench coming from the tons of seaweed on the coastline.
If it was so serious, I would say we have a problem with weed, but I'm not going to.
Well, we have all that too, so it's not unique to you, but I can understand.
Yes,
so what's on your mind today, Raymond?
Pardon?
What's on your mind today, sir?
Oh, many things, but first of all, I want to give my heartfelt condolences, deepest sympathy to Mr. F. Miller on the loss of his great dad, Captain Ned Miller, and would like to say that I had a super tanker yesterday afternoon to salute and honor Captain Ned Miller. Super tanker passed 10 miles off the north side of Cayman Brac, sounded the horns 10 times, and last night at 9:20, the request was made to sound the horn 8 miles north of his home in Northside, Grand Cayman. And in fact, I had Mr. McCurley Green on the phone at the time. He was hearing me when I was making the request, and then he was on the line when the captain of the ship said we have sounded 10 long blows of the horn from the Norwegian propane tanker B.W. Var sounded its horns at 9:20 last night, right off the north side where Captain Ned Miller raced up and spent a lot of his life in that area. So a magnificent salute was given in honor of him, and the Indian captain passes his condolences and heartfelt wishes to the family of Captain Ned Miller.
That was very good of you, Raymond. Every time I talk to you about seafaring, I say to myself, I wonder when the government is going to be. I think you might be the second night that we have. Sir Vassal was the first, but you do so much, and trust me, there are a lot of people who appreciate what you do, and all I can say is keep up the good works because you're good at what you do.
Yes, sir. That's right. Yeah, I do my utmost with it. Whenever, like yesterday, the U.S. Coast Guard, I communicated with the U.S. Coast Guard. That's the longest distance ever in the 40 years I've been communicating. Mobile, Alabama Coast Guard Station and Fort Lauderdale, Florida Coast Guard Station, but that was only a skip. Anyway, the United States Coast Guard was broadcasting several times yesterday, but was a lot of times unreadable due to the VHF having a limited range, and I called 911 and made a report that the U.S. Coast Guard is broadcasting a report and I heard as much as I could hear saying, keep a sharp lookout. And what we did confirm last night, that someone had sighted a raft that drifted somewhere in the area of Grand Cayman, but had nobody on it, whether it was a raft, a survival raft from some ship or boat, or whether it was a wooden raft that had people on it and maybe they drowned from the raft. That is an unknown origin, but that was probably the U.S. Coast Guard was announcing it about 10 times yesterday. But due to the VHF restrictions and hearing transmissions and reading them and understanding, that was the problem. But we did find out something pertaining to a raft that was floating. And then I notified other ships to keep a sharp lookout for anything around the Cayman Islands as well.
Mm-hmm. That's very good, Raymond. And I commend you. I every time I talk to you, like I said, I commend you for what you do. What's the saying? Time is longer than rope. So
yep.
Hopefully you'll be recognized for what you do
Hopefully
in a short
40
time.
years, I've been doing this now.
Yeah.
40 years, and I'm actually an emergency response person, sleeping with my cell phone 5 feet away from my head.
Yeah, I know.
I called out of bed to assist people, and that's how I do it. I don't turn my phone off.
It's a pity you're not here. It's a pity you're not here tomorrow to witness and participate in all the goodies that we have doing dominoes, table tennis, cards, and we have the DVD, The Old Man and the Sea.
Yeah, man. Mr. Raymond, thank you, man. And we'll get a chance to chat with you some more. Mr. Denniston is going to make sure everything's in order for tomorrow, and hopefully a few more minutes for him to remind us, extend the invitation, and like. Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Raymond. But I guess, like he shares, it's that calling he's answered, and hopefully as a people we start to look at more ways that we can make a contribution. So you got dominoes on tomorrow?
Yeah, we got dominoes. I brought my table tennis board because I always keep one. In my young days, I was pretty good at table tennis.
Yeah.
And then we have cards, the usual. Because on the ship, they play a lot of poker, Of course, it won't be for any money. And then the office manager has got the DVD for Old Man and the Sea, and we have a screen there that pulls out of the ceiling and all that. So we have that. And I have to say also that the timing with all the things that government is doing this week, I didn't realize that it kind of clashed with what we're doing. But we understand that. But the governor, I was privileged to have audience with him, and he says that his wife loves to dance, so he'll attend our next social, which is I think the 16th of September. So we're looking forward to that. And we also are going to have an audience with next week Wednesday. No, this Wednesday with the finance minister, because there are a few things that we need to straighten out. So we're on the ball trying to do the best for the association,
Mr. Denison, you all do an excellent job, and you remind us of how important it is to give, to contribute, to be of service. And it's something that I admire and respect. I see seafarers every day, and I look at my own father, and I just wish one day, if I can be a tenth of the man he is, I'll be 1,000 times better than I am. So
I always said that about my father too.
Yeah, man. Yes.
Now that I don't have a beard, everybody said, "Boy, you look like your father." Well,
so that might happen to me then. One day I might get accused of being handsome. All right.
But let me say how grateful I am on behalf of the association for you to give me the opportunity, just briefly. Of course, I could go on and on and on, but I know the time is limited. So thank you so much for allowing me for the time. And
always a pleasure.
All you seafarers and widows and of seafarers and wives, even the children of seafarers, please come out 9 to 3 tomorrow. We have all kind of goodies. And then 6:30 to 8 tomorrow night with the National Trust.
Miss Susan, just reminds me we have a quick call coming in before you go. It could be somewhat chastising us. Let's just find out who it is. Are you nervous? No? Good afternoon. How are you?
At my age,
I'm fine.
At my age, I don't get nervous.
So much chastising you all. I think you all do a good job.
Well, I was close. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to find out from him, what about the calendar for next year? Is that all completed?
Well, next year we're going to be honoring the quartermasters, and we have it all. You have a quartermaster you want to put in, because we still need about 4. But we've sent out letters to our sponsors, and I got to thank all the sponsors who have replied so far. I mean, it's like it's almost untold that before the end of June that we're getting actually sponsorship money. Check here, check there. So we have it under control. But you're free to contact the office 947-7348, and the young lady there will tell you, what we have planned.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, thank you. God bless.
Thank you. All the best.
And as the caller shared, the calendars, not only are they keepsakes, man, but they're amazing. So she's talking about next year's calendar already.
I know. But we thought about all that, and we sent out the request for sponsorship, and I must say, I think it's 5 or 6 that have replied already.
Yeah, man. This is what I see. There are those of us who, when I say us, I mean collectively, corporate, civic, individual, who give, and that's amazing. And I'm hopeful as a community we start to increasingly show how much we love, admire, respect, and appreciate not just the contributions.
Well, let's just hope. You mentioned earlier about Tuesday being the day for the MLA,
the cabinet poll.
Yeah, so maybe they could recognize us a little more. But we're still grateful.
Okay,
grateful for small mercies.
I stand next to you and a little bit to the behind. So
it's me saying that, not you. So
no, I said it first. Remember, I gotta take my licks.
But my shoulder is broader than yours, so I can take it.
There you go. So then I got my back. But thank you, sir. So tomorrow 9 until 3 initially. First of all, the festivities, and 6:30 until 8 p.m.
And we're gonna have finger foods too. So
yeah, man. At the Seafarers Hall, right on is that Victory?
On the corner of Victory and Shamrock.
Right. Yeah, okay. Well, listen, that's tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to having you. And
well, I hope you guys can come. As a matter of fact, I think the GIS or whatever, I think they're going to be there, at least in the evening part. I'm not sure about the...
Well, my calendar, I was to have a window in the morning before I come here. After I leave there and come here, I got to go there. And then, so that's the plan. I got to take a swing by there just to say hello. That's my plan. God's willing.
I'll be there. I'll be there all day.
All right. He'll be there all day. In the evenings, he's doing a 2-man show. No, Mr. Denson, thank you, sir.
Thank you, too. Thank you. And thank the listeners for tuning in.
All right. Well, when we come back, we'll have the excellent company of Ms. Sandra Catron to share with us. Looking forward to that. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Do you ever feel like your business is way over here, but your customers are all the way over there? With Yellow's print, online, and mobile app, now your customers can find you here. Get your business noticed by adding more Yellow. Book your consultation today at findyellow.com.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
I have various items coming from different suppliers that I need to ship to Cayman. Do you offer consolidation?
Yes. Seaboard Marine offers consolidation for full and less than container loads. We can hold your packages at our Miami warehouse until everything arrives and ship it all in one go. And we have the best rates to Grand Cayman. Visit seaboardmarine.com for more information.
Shipping shore to shore.
Across the Caribbean, our competitors have built piers that give cruise ship passengers a better arrival and departure experience. How can we expect to compete if we don't meet passengers' expectations?
Looking forward, looking bright.
Learn more and spread the word.
Support our port, support our tourism.
There are plenty of reasons to be a Logic customer. There's lightning-fast internet connectivity. There's the great overall customer experience. And now, you can improve your Wi-Fi connectivity with Logic Boost Wi-Fi for free. With Boost, you can extend your freedom to stream, game, and download seamlessly anywhere in your home, like your patio or your underground lair if you have one. Sign up now for any Logic Bundle package and get free Boost Wi-Fi for a limited time. Visit logic.ky for details.
Radio Cayman 3 to 6 mix on the weekdays. Brought to you by
Cayman Insurance Center, serving the community for 45 years. Don't take chances with your family's future. Call Denise Brown at 814-7229 or Michael Webster at 925-5433. Fitness Plus and Train with Dre. Getting in shape has never been easier with the mobile fitness app by Train with Dre and the new Eco Power Sport Art equipment.
Every day.
All the time.
Visit fitnessplus.com for more information. And City Walk, serving Chinese, Japanese, and Filipino dishes until 11 p.m. each night. East meets West at City Walk. Dine in, take out, or order online. See their full menu at citywalk.ky. Call 947-9965.
Ultimate Party Show in the afternoon. Radio Cayman Super Jam.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecasts, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman 89.9 FM.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we get into our discussion with Ms. Sandra Catron, perhaps again, on behalf of Mr. Denison Tibbetts and the Cayman Islands Seafarers Association, would you accept the invitation to join them tomorrow at the Seafarers Hall? 9 a.m. to 3 as we celebrate International Seafarers Day. And then in the evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m., they call it in conjunction with the National Trust in collaboration with the Seafarers Association, the Tales. That's T-A-L-E-S. Not lies. Okay, the Tales of Cayman's Seafarers. And, as they share a historical discussion in honor of International Seafarers Day, Mr. Denison reminded us a number of speakers, including himself, but we also get to hear Mr. Kim Jackson tell us about his treasure hunting experience. So real live treasure hunter, Mr. Kim. I get a chance to share with him on that. Now, there is a contribution that's going to be shared between the National Trust and Seafarers, so please go right on and enjoy the evening. Sandra, thank you again for joining us. I love this place. I love the country in which we live, the fact that we get a visit, just right here.
Yeah.
With people from all walks of life, all
Absolutely.
places, and sometimes, they remind you how the word that I've heard often, even from those who are almost as big a sinner as I am, they say, boy, we're blessed to live here. They may not go to church, they may not consider themselves in a particular faith, but they use the word blessed because we live in a great place.
Absolutely.
But it's for us to actively not just promote it, but to protect it and preserve it so that we can have it and be able to share and enjoy it. So, you know what? It's a good place.
I'm 100% with you in that, Sterling. I love it.
Yeah, man. Well,
no place like home.
No place like home, and you don't need to click your heels either. So it may not be Kansas total, but it's a good place.
Exactly.
If I may ask, and I'll invite our listeners to be a part of our discussion. Guide me. I sometimes people say, "Oh, he gets a little cheeky." It's not because I, had a little extra shot of my coffee, of what Susan says, a little bit of espresso, or I maybe sweetened it a little too much with condensed milk. It's not that. I just think that if you can't laugh a lot, you won't be able to love a little.
Right.
I love to laugh, so we got to be able to do it.
Why not?
But our people, are we critically consuming the things? Are we responsible in promoting and protecting? Are we willing to say to the powers that be, civic, whether they're elected or appointed, whether they're corporate citizens, whether they're in the, in the church, whether they're wherever they are we say, hey, you need to stand up and step out. You need to be accountable. You need to be willing to accept responsibility.
I think that more and more we're kind of moving in that direction. There is a shifting of the guards, so to speak. And traditionally, Caymanians have had a reputation for being very meek and humble. And for us, that meant not always expressing your opinion, especially to people who we saw as people of power, whether it was politicians, the pastor of the church, or even in our employment environments, our bosses. We weren't really willing to speak out. And I do think that a lot of times that's now changing. I find more and more people are becoming more vocal because they're recognizing that if they don't speak out, it's definitely going to be to their own detriment. So we've seen, for example, with the CPR group, they have done something that's quite historical. And I think, we have to take our hats off to all of the volunteers, all 30 plus persons who made that possible. Because without them pushing it, we wouldn't be where we are today, having seen a historical moment accomplished. Okay, so as I listen to you, and I'll just put this flyer here, maybe, and Miss Susan's constant, remind her, put the camera on something else, not on me. Hey, Miss Susan, put the camera on that flyer. That's a flyer for tomorrow's Seafarers meeting. You know what? You put that on. Oh, she tell me this. Next, during the break, Mom, I forget what. Is he that she was directing camera? Anyways, come into the apron. Sandra Catron is our guest. The phone lines are open. Sandra Hill now. That's all right. Please forgive me. I meant to ask. Because I knew. Do I have an it? Sandra Catron Hill? Nope. Just Sandra Hill. Sandra Hill. Listen, thank you for correcting me because I knew, and I have a classmate. Okay. We've been in school. I think she reminded me 500 years. And I still call her by her maiden name. Yeah, that's all right. With the greatest of love and respect, but that's what I remember her as. And it's only when, you realize when somebody calls your wife by, wait a minute, she's been married 50 years now. So time to get it right. Time to get it right. Yes. I was Sandra Hill, that's it. Absolutely. You mentioned CPR, and we were talking about the thing. I think to the group, the humble and the meek. Because you see, as a people, we humble and we're meek. And I look at a couple of things. And now we're bold and beautiful. Bold and beautiful? Ooh, what you say? Yes. I asked a couple of individuals of things that I heard about. I did not go to the historical written record. I just went to the verbal record because we're still an oral society. And they say, yes, unless you push us into a corner, yes, we don't speak out. We tend to do, we elected you. Go down with it, and if we don't like it next election, we just take you out. We put you right. That's how we did it. But they reminded me of a couple of things, and not just the very important historical occasion when the women said, there were some men apparently who said, listen, this isn't right. Right. And then when we look at the history of the world, what Cayman did then, there's still some other modern societies that did not enjoy that same level of sort of voter participation. Right. And we were ahead of the curve in many cases. And then I was told, well, do you remember in the Georgetown Town Hall, the men would assemble, again, most of the men assembled because they didn't like certain things. And remember this. Now, I don't remember those things because I was very young. But those things happen. I fast forward to today. CPR, for instance, some of the young students were talking about environmental concerns and considerations. So what is changing that are we now going back to what was the example of 5 decades ago, 4 decades ago? I don't know that we're going backwards, but I think a lot has changed in terms of how we communicate. No, sorry. I don't mean not going backwards. Are we going back to, hey, there was an example there. Right. We got away from it. Now we need to remember that's in us. We have that. So yeah, I think people have always known that they have the ability to make a change. Okay. I think really what happened historically is they only used it for really big what they saw as really big, important things, like maybe women's suffrage or, the right to vote and that sort of thing. But now in this day and age, the average person has a voice.
Okay.
In a lot of respects. So you don't have to be connected to anyone, politically or otherwise, to really express yourself and to potentially reach thousands of people and to make a difference. So the conduits that we use to communicate, in particular with social media, the ability for us to utilize those tools to now reach people far beyond our shores and our borders makes everyone quite powerful if they choose to exercise it.
Okay, let's look at that when we come back. Sorry, Miss Susan, I apologize. I was engaged in this conversation. She tells me the news is up. Let's go to her news. But let's talk about that voice and exercising that and the reach. Sandra Hill sits with us. Phone lines are open, so call and share your thoughts.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Let's read the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman. From Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
A 77-year-old visitor to the island has died in a water-related incident. Police arrived at the 7 Mile beach around 3:30 p.m. After the report was filed, first aid was rendered to the victim at the location. He was taken to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead. The victim is a 77-year-old man visiting the Cayman Islands from Massachusetts of the United States. The matter is currently under investigation. Good afternoon. I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, U.S. President Donald Trump has said he is imposing hard-hitting new sanctions on Iran, including on the office of the country's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Mr. Trump said the additional sanctions were in response to the shooting down of a U.S. drone and many other things. The UN says tens of thousands of Islamic State fighters and family members being held in Iraq and Syria must be tried or released. Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet also called on countries to take responsibility for their citizens and take them back if not charged. The last ISIS strongholds fell in March and some 55,000 people are being held, including thousands of foreigners. 2 German armed forces Eurofighter jets have collided and crashed in the northeastern part of Germany. Although both pilots managed to eject from the planes, reports said one of them had died. One of the Eurofighters went down in a forest while the other crashed near a village about 6 miles away. The pilot who survived was found dangling from a tree by rescue teams. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Did you know Georgetown's revitalization goes hand in hand with a new cruise terminal? The project will create jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities for Caymanians, and Georgetown will once again be a hub for visitors and locals alike, a capital we can all enjoy. Learn more and spread the word.
Support our tourism.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today, and thanks for joining us. Sandra Hill is our guest, and I'm really, really, honestly grateful for a chance to chat with you and to perhaps get a perspective from you that maybe we all don't always appreciate. There's no question. I love this country. I sometimes say and do things, and it may not come out perhaps the most diplomatic, but it's because I honestly believe that what we have here is worth protecting and preserving. It's worth sharing and promoting, but it requires an active, sort of effort on our part, a sacrifice, a service to do things. It could be, somebody's dog just running up and down and eating your chickens and digging up your roses or what have you, or it could be one of the more ferocious dogs. But it has to be leashed, and we have to address it. It could be littering on our streets. Those are small things, but are significant things if they're not, checked properly.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that, we do on the Mall Road, literally speaking, is that we put almost everything out there. And then it's up for the audience members, the readers, to decide how much of it they want to digest and how much of it they want to take on in terms of commentary. Some people, you might put up a post and they might say, I don't care about this topic. But, I have to remind, people who participate in the forums that you don't have to care about every single topic. You would be exhausted if you did. And so we put out there what people provide us and what people give us by way of the conduits that are available. Now, if that touches you as an individual and you say, you know what, this is a topic that I do care about. I want to lend my voice to this. I want to post a comment. I want to share it on my personal social media platform. Then you're free to do so. And it's important for people to recognize the power of participating in that format and sharing information. So there are some people who will say, people just complain about everything. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but what I do know in this environment that we live in, where we have access to WhatsApp messages and Insta chatting and Snapchatting and everything else, you can readily share your opinion with people, your opinion on any matters with a large group of persons. And so in that sense, if you're reading every single thing that's posted, maybe you do feel that people are oversharing or people are, sharing every single thing that happens to them. But, we get so many tips and pieces of information every single day. And the people who send it to us, they're genuinely passionate about whatever we share. So I've just gotten a message, which I haven't even had a chance to post yet, about these buses that are running around Cayman, most of them are tour buses, emitting a lot of fumes. And people are like, this can't be good for the people that live here in terms of your lung development, your respiratory system. And for years, I personally have been asking the question, why don't we have emissions testing?
Yeah.
How hard can that be?
I want to ask you about that, because that is something that we hear. But can I ask it in this context initially? The Mall Road. For maybe there is this same term in other parts of the world. I don't know. I didn't do a comparative study of other societies. But in Cayman, we grew up hearing about, you hear them on the Mall Road.
Right.
Gossip, rumor, innuendo, conjecture, speculation, whatever you want.
Right.
But there was a lot of substance, there was a lot of truth to it.
Yep. In fact, just last weekend, I was out in Bodden Town at the Mission House. Miss Jennifer from the National Trust had a function there. They were doing a little bit of fundraiser. And so the Mall Road went live. We did a little live streaming at their event. And, one of the funny, interesting stories that she mentioned as well, we mentioned the Mall Road all the time because the original, an example of one of the original Mall Road women, funny enough, it was a woman. Her picture is on the Mission House. Her picture's on the Mission House wall, but it was her job starting at the age of 10 to walk from that Mission House all the way from Bodden Town before we had paved roads, before we had street lights and vehicles and all these other things that she could have potentially utilized. So she was on foot walking all the way from Bodden Town, coming into Georgetown and picking up whatever news was available that she needed to take back to the mistress of her house. So whether that meant what supplies were coming in, what ships were, on their way, anything newsworthy. And she had to remember, whatever information, there was I'm sure no computer for her to write anything down, no iPhone to type it in, no notepad. She had to remember what she was told. And then once she informed the lady of the house, it was then her responsibility to pass it on to other people in the eastern districts, which included North Side and East End. Right. So, the Mall Road concept has evolved, obviously, but it has existed in some form or another here in the Cayman Islands from day one. And, when people hear of the Mall Road, they often think of gossip and innuendo and whatever. But the truth of the matter is, most of what you hear in the Mall Road is almost 100% spot on. That has been my experience. And it's amazing, but it is what it is. And a lot of official sources, like sometimes people will say, well, what's your source? And of course, I never divulge my sources, but I'll just say my source is the Mall Road. It doesn't matter who the person is. But, I have grown to know what sources are obviously more reliable than others and which ones, when they tell you something, you can mark it. Like you can count it 100%. Yeah. But a lot of official sources are not going to divulge information necessarily, and they may not get to it. For example, there was a drowning in the vicinity of the Kimpton on Friday. Within an hour of that happening, we had it up on the Mall Road. And no other media had it. Nobody else was talking about it. I think by yesterday, some of the other media finally had something a bit more formal up. But the actual official source, which would be the RCIPS, to report it, didn't report it until this morning. So the person who provided the tip, because he was an eyewitness to, what was going on, he was like, have you had any confirmation from the police? I said, listen, to be fair to them, their PR department, unless it's a major incident, works Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So you're not going to see anything from them until Monday morning. And that's just what it is. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't mean that this person is second guessing themselves in terms of what they saw. And sure enough, this morning, the official police report came out. So I think because as a Caymanian, I have the connections on the Mall Road, so to speak, it does give me a little bit of a leg up on other media houses. And I want to share with you the sort of background, because the Mall Road is actually coming up on our second anniversary at the end of the month on the 29th. And I want to share with you kind of how the Mall Road got started, because it really was started almost as a tongue-in-cheek sort of a thing. It wasn't anything serious, but I had been working with Loop Cayman, sometimes providing them with tips and information. And because they're a corporate entity, they're actually owned by Digicel, their arms were often tied with a lot of stories that I would share. And I said, this is of importance to the community. You guys should get this out there. Oh, well, it's a little too hot to touch. It's too political. It's too this or it's too that. So they wouldn't touch it. And so one day I just said, why am I sitting here fighting with people overseas who have no real concept in any event of what's going on in Cayman, what's truly topical. You've asked me to come on board as sort of a consultant. I'm trying to give you guys advice. And at the end of the day, a lot of my efforts are falling on deaf ears because, you don't think that it's topical or it's something you can touch because it's too hot or whatever. And so I literally just sat down at my computer and said, I'm going to start my own platform. And within a day, I had the Mall Road up and going. And, I just thought of the name, obviously, because I'm like, Mall Road is everybody. When you hear the name, if you're a Caymanian, you pretty much know what that means. It's self-explanatory. There's not a whole lot of explanation that has to go into it. And so, I started that platform and it's really taken off. And I said, as irony would have it, about a year later, Loop came back to me and said, we want to talk to you because the Mall Road had really taken off above anyone's expectations. We have, in less than a year, over 14,000 followers on Facebook. And we just started our IG platform like maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and we've got over 5,300 IG followers. So, it has really, really taken off, right? And people hate it. People love it. Some people are in between, but they know that that's their go-to source for information. And so Loop came back and said, the managers are interested in talking to you because now they've realized what you've been saying. Now that this competing platform is out there, our readership is down. Nobody really reads Loop Cayman anymore. This is what they told me. And, we're suffering because of it. And we're wondering if you'd be interested in coming on board. And I'm thinking, why would I now do that? When I was providing you with information of what you guys needed to do, unfortunately, you were not listening very well. And so now I've demonstrated and I've showed you how it can be done. And now you're saying, come back on board? That didn't make any logical sense for me.
So, Sandra, from that perspective then, we are speaking to Sandra Hill. We're talking about the Mall Road. And the Mall Road, the original iteration of what we knew, as you shared, it was just the way people shared information. And it was a lot of truth. But it were things that people wouldn't necessarily sort of print and publish and the like.
Mm-hmm.
You digitized it now, and it's accessible, responsive to what a community is.
Exactly.
In that vein, then, when we look at the notion of some of the things, and I want to talk about the buses and the pollution, because we hear it. People call me constantly, and not just students, not just parents who said, "Oh, my child asked me because they're in school, can you call?" I think, well, why don't you call? You're now calling me off air on my phone at my desk. Call the talk show and say, "Hey, can we have some sort of thing?" We are afraid to say something.
A lot of people still are. Yeah.
Right, and your point with respect to, I call it sort of managing the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
They establish, so to speak, media outlet doesn't want this because it could offend a potential advertiser or upset a potential something. Where's that line where you, hey, listen, this is the fact. This has happened in this place. As an example, you refer to.
Yeah, well, I tell you what we do is I would say 98% of what we're given ends up on the mall road in some form or another. Sometimes we sit on it for a little while. We flesh out the truth of, what it is as much as we can. But, we tell people this isn't something that we can confirm. When we write it, we say on the mall road, or our sources have said X, Y, Z. And in life, in my opinion, whether it's coming from the mall road or an official source, you take everything with a grain of salt in any event. Because even, mainstream media has a slant to it. And a lot of mainstream media have gotten information wrong over the years. So no one is immune from mistakes or errors or being slightly off. But it has been my experience that about 97% of what we put up there, you can mark it that it's going to be 100% accurate. Okay. It's just that it's not coming from the traditional sources, like I said, like the authorities or the politicians are not going to say X, Y, Z or, but when we get it, we're pretty sure of, the sources and where it's coming from.
Okay, now with that, and we look at
But Sterling, I just wanted to say, people are still, despite people having access to communicating and having their own social media platforms, there are a lot of people out there who are still very much afraid of speaking out. And the primary reason for that in this community, because Cayman is so incredibly small, people are marginalized and people are reprimanded and they're meant to feel like second-class citizens because they do speak up on issues. And this is a real serious concern in our community. So those persons who choose to remain in corporate Cayman, which I am not, I'm a small business owner, so I'm not part of that platform anymore. But those people are the ones who a lot of times will call me on the DL, so to speak, and give me information because they can't get on the radio. They can't say anything from an official perspective because they work for some big law firm or they, work for the Cayman Islands government. And they're afraid that if they use their voice, there will be repercussions for them doing so. And I know of people who have been terminated because of something that they posted on their social media platforms. Nothing to do directly with their jobs, just something that may have happened to them and they shared an experience and they posted it and they have lost their jobs because of that. And those people have families to feed. They have children, they have mortgages to pay. So they can't take that chance. So I feel very blessed and privileged that I'm not working for anyone. There's this old saying that you're working for the man. Well, I don't work for the man. I work for myself. Exactly. And as a result, that provides me with a certain liberty and a certain amount of freedom where I can pretty much say whatever I want within reason, because obviously you always open yourself up to being challenged. But, I don't have those extra pressures of thinking about, well, what is this person going to say or do? Because there really isn't much they can say or do.
Right. And you are actually started to answer the question I was going to ask you, because that is the reality. People will be still reluctant to share, not because they're betraying confidences or they're whistleblowing. This has happened, and it is, even when it is something that is public, they don't want to be associated with it because of the expected repercussions.
Yeah, it's fear.
The fear. If I'm not, and again, I leave it to you, one thing we can see and admire in you is your courage and conviction. So I'll ask, and if it's not appropriate, But do you face the same potential repercussions, intimidation, threats, the things that people say, you know what, I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to be disinvited. I don't want to lose this contract. I don't want whatever it is.
Right. What I would say is there are always repercussions to what you do. And so I may face repercussions, but I don't always accept that I'm facing them. So in other words, I don't allow it to stop me. I continue and I move forward. So a lot of people say, oh, well, you're going to get sued for that. And I said, okay, well, I actually know a little bit about the law, thankfully. And so I know that the truth is an absolute defense to defamation and slander and libel. So as long as I've got the truth and this person, you know, if they want to challenge me in court and they know that I can actually prove what I'm saying, because they don't know what proof I've got at the back end. Right? They don't know what my sources have actually showed me or so on and so forth. Because a lot of times I will have documentation and other bits and pieces of information that I don't necessarily put out there. But I also am very cautious because we have had one litigation process began. It was settled out of court, thankfully. But that has really taught me that when you go after certain high profile individuals, proceed under the understanding or assumption that you will be sued. So write your article with the anticipation of being sued. So cross-check everything. Use words very, very carefully. Quote your sources as the sources of your information instead of just saying, oh, this person is XYZ. Our source alleges da-da-da-da-da. You know what I'm saying? Because they're just people who, they have a reputation that they think that they need to protect. And they will do so at all costs, even when you're telling the truth. So one of the big stories, and I mean, Sterling, I must say that, again, when Cayman Mall Road first started out, there were a lot of people like, you know, what is this? This is junk, blah, blah, blah. But as we move now into our second year, we have people who have said straight up they don't read any other news sources. They rely on us because they've realized that what we're putting out there is a lot of good information and is the truth. And then you know that you're starting to make a difference when quote-unquote mainstream media starts to follow your lead. So one of the big stories that we broke and that was put out there was this whole thing with Offreg and what was going on at their board level, you know, the threats of violence from the board chair and board members and so on. And, you know, because, again, of who was involved in that, when our sources came to us, I said, listen, we need stuff in writing. We need proof of this. 100% believe you, but we know who the players are, and we know the first thing that they would say is a threat of a lawsuit. And we reached out to the players and said, hey, we've gotten this information. Do you care to comment on it? And of course, you know, there's standard responses now that you expect from people, and you know right away whether or not what you've received is the truth, just based on how people respond as well, just from a little bit of a journalistic experience perspective, right? And so, you know, when we put that out there, we showed the minutes of the meetings and we, you know, quoted what had transpired and laid out all sorts of information. All of a sudden, every other single media jumped on that a couple of days later and said, well, according to Mall Road, you know, this is what transpired and these are documents. But they led with what was a really considered quite a big story. Right. And we had done our research. We had gotten the documentation required. And to now understand that other media, they do take you seriously. They do look a lot of what you do and what you put out there because they know that you've got those sources and those means of connecting with people in the community. And people are willing to provide us with a lot of information.
Once you're competent, credible, they can trust you.
Exactly. So we offer a voice. The Mall Road now offers a voice to people where I think, you know, even if they feel like they're not in a position to voice it themselves, they can come through us and still have the information put out there. But, you know, I don't operate under the assumption that there are no consequences for what I do. But I also, like I said, have positioned myself where I'm a small business owner and, you know, I work for myself. So at least from the perspective of that concern, I don't have to worry about an employer breathing down my neck or threatening me with my job or anything of that sort.
You reference, and it's obviously to your credit and benefit, you're very intelligent, you're well spoken, you have a good grasp of the knowledge of the law, you know, your business acumen is there. In the Cayman context, right, that obviously bodes well for you being able to exude a level of confidence and be able to do the things if a person has that, on their side. But in the Cayman context, when it comes to sources, we know some jurisdictions you can protect your source, you're not obligated to give it up. In Cayman, two things. Do we still have that level of maturity within our journalistic profession that says, okay, how does that compare?
You know what is so interesting about this, Sterling? In life, we often will go full circle with a lot of things that we do. So my first sort of real job on campus at USF back in the day was in journalism. I actually worked for the paper at the time, and I was a writer. And so my actual undergrad work is in technical writing. And a lot of people don't really know this necessarily about me, but so I've had a little bit of experience interviewing people. Like back in the day, I've interviewed like the president of the university and even some visiting Middle Eastern guest lecturers and stuff like that, right? But, I moved away from that because my love was really with the law. And I just saw that as a means to eventually getting to that route. And I haven't been able to complete my articles in Cayman. And so I've come kind of full circle in the sense that now I'm back in journalism to some extent. And I'm writing and I'm, utilizing interviewing techniques and sources that I have built relationships with people over the years. So it's kind of ironic, I think, how that process has happened. I remember Charles Whitaker, I'm sure he doesn't mind me sharing this story, for years he's been saying to me, Sandy, you should have your own writing platform. I've written for Desmond before, Mr. Desmond Seals. When he was alive many, many years ago, I did some freelancing work for his paper. I've done a couple pieces for Wendy at CNS. And Charles has said, this is what you need to be doing. I always like, no, that's not me. I'd kind of just brush it off. And when the Mall Road started, he was one of the first people to say, remember, I told you, this is where you're at. This is where you can really bring a voice and lend a voice to the people of the Cayman Islands. Now, in terms of answering your question, we are, in many respects, very antiquated when it comes to legislation. So even our defamation legislation, what's on the books compared to even the UK and other jurisdictions is old and is dated. And it needs updating. But of course, our legislators, they can't be bothered. They don't see the necessity to modernize a lot of our laws. But that's definitely one of them that needs to be modernized and needs to fall in line with accepted practices worldwide that really offer journalists a good deal of protection. Especially when it comes to like public figures and that sort of thing. So I think we're lacking in respect to a lot of that. But at the same time, we have the common law, which is available to us. And decisions will fall with not just what the legislation says. Obviously, it has to follow the legislation, but how that legislation was interpreted by judges by way of the cases themselves, which is the precedents that are set. And so I think, we've only had a handful of cases in the Cayman Islands that have been very specific towards defamation and libel and that sort of thing. Most of them in the political arena, which is a little bit different. Most people understand that the media will be given certain leeways when it comes to reporting information and putting information out there. So, yeah, I think we definitely need to do some work legislatively to bring ourselves up to par with other jurisdictions, especially the mother country. So I don't know at what point that may or may not be a priority for the legislators. But, we work within the framework that we have. And the other media houses, they're always interested to know, if someone's going to challenge Cayman Mall Road, they're going to watch the story very, very carefully because indirectly and sometimes very directly, it impacts them as well. So you find that there is teamwork when it comes to especially any sort of legislation. CNS has had, I think they've had some politicians start legislation, but then, fell away because the person's never did anything about it. But, they've been very open about kind of what their process has been. And Wendy has been great about even sharing with me how she responds because, there is this feeling that everyone feels like they can sue you. So the first thing, if you write something about someone, they don't like it, they're going to send you a letter, I'm going to sue you. And she's even just given practical advice about how to respond to those types of emails and messages and stuff like that. And yeah, it's been, a very, very interesting experience, but lots of room for improvement, I would say.
As we go to the break, I was thinking that just like the FOI legislation where we create a culture of disclosure in the public realm, that we get to a culture of society that says, if this is wrong, we're going to call you on it. The media is going to be expected to be, that watchdog for us. But as a populace, we're not going to tolerate these egregious acts by whether it's politically elected or appointed, whether it's business or a long ways to go. Maybe we'll get there before the century's out. Maybe we'll start to see something new tomorrow. I don't know. But what we're going to do when we come back from the break is hear more from Miss Sandra Hill. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
King Sports Center Art of Fun Summer Camp is back from July 2nd to August 2nd. Now in its 15th year, the Art of Fun Camp is ideal for kids ages 5 through 10 with activities from football, basketball, dodgeball, squash, rock climbing, arts and craft, dance, singing, and more. Your child can practice physical and social skills while having fun in a safe and secure environment. For more info, call 946-KING. Like King's Sports Center on Facebook, and you can also find them on Instagram or call 946-5464. King Sports Center, providing you with all your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs. Register before May 31st and save 10% on camp registration.
Headlines.
With the latest headlines.
Headlines.
All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Headlines.
Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Radio Cayman News.
Headlines.
Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Store enough drinking water for each family member in your household for at least 5 days. Be sure to have at least 1 gallon per person per day. Store additional water for those with special needs, such as nursing mothers, young children, or people with illnesses. Keep drinking water in a clean, non-corrosive, tightly covered container. For more useful hurricane preparedness tips, visit the Water Authority's website, www.waterauthority.ky, or follow us on social media.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Puritan Cleaners.
Meet the world with Puritan professional launderers and dry cleaners. Call 949-7104 for opening hours at Puritan's Countryside Savannah, Elgin Avenue besides Off the Peg, and 337 Eastern Avenue. Drive through, rain or shine. Ask about Puritan's ongoing discounts plus free pickup and delivery. Call 949-7104. Puritan's 949-7104.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate Miss Sandra Hill accepting the invitation to come and sit with us. And as you shared, Cayman Mile Road, right? 2-year anniversary on this Saturday?
It's, June the 29th.
Wow.
Yeah.
I commend you for that, from many perspectives, but equally, and perhaps more so, if our society is going to be healthy, it needs to have a very mature media that is going to keep the country on its toes, the corporate as well as the political realm, so that people understand. I was just thinking during the break, and I'll share with you publicly. I don't think it's a friend of mine says, what he likes about the UK. is that the media is strong. The politician, the business, they understand whether it's the BBC or some other, and he has his favorite sort of, newspapers that he likes, and others aren't credible. But they're going to get on the story. They're going to have a level of investigation, and the public is going to get, a level of information. Now, that is a healthy society when the media is protected, when it's robust. Hopefully we get there. Hopefully we are there.
And you know what? I try to explain to people as well. We don't take ourselves too seriously all the time. So one of the things that we like to do at Mall Road is we put up like memes and just things that are going to make you chuckle and laugh and maybe see things a little bit differently. We're not all about just reporting every single time there's a murder or every single time there's a robbery, all this bad news. Like sometimes we just share things that are interesting. And we share news. We have a section of unusual news from different places in the world. So we'll share regional news. I tell people just because it's called Cayman Mall Road, we don't live in isolation in this world. We don't live in a bucket. We're a small island, but we are surrounded by things that impact us regionally, internationally, and so on. And, we share a lot of health-related news that, studies are coming out about different things. Like there was one recently, a Harvard study that talked about the ill effects of basically putting children in school too early and how it doesn't serve the child well, that they're being forced to learn how to read by like kindergarten and first grade and stuff like that, which is so interesting because we always measure early reading skills as a sign of success. And it turns out that it actually isn't long term, So there's lots of interesting studies. You posted one today, health-wise, talking about ibuprofen and painkillers and how, even if you take them for just a week straight, that increases your risk of having a heart attack by 50%. And a lot of people don't know that information. So we put a lot of information out there. We share a lot of regional news, a lot of things that are happening in the world around us. Because again, we're an island, but we're not isolated from the rest of the world. So we have people on our website. We get over 30,000 visits per month on the website. And we have people from all over the world because our website analytics will tell us, who's visiting, right down to even, within Cayman, what specific city they're in. So if it's Georgetown, West Bay, and what time of day people are looking at the Facebook page or the website or whatever. So we get a lot of information, and we have people halfway around the world who are reading our articles, because they feel like we kind of keep them abreast of what's going on, particularly in the Cayman Islands, but not always, because we do cover other areas as well. So one of the interesting things in the beginning of the school year is that Jamaica started to take a real serious position about their school meals in their schools and what they're going to be offering, and trying to get rid of like bulla and cheese and stuff like this being served to the kids, which really nutritionally doesn't have a whole lot of value. Although it's a staple part of a lot of our diets and a lot of our food, it doesn't offer good brain food for children with developing brains and who need to maintain their stamina and strength throughout the day. So they were trying to set certain nutritional requirements for school meals. And we posted that, and a lot of people kind of thought, well, what is Cayman doing on this front? Are we removing sodas from the schools? Are we thinking about trying to make meals a bit more nutritional instead of like fried foods and all this stuff for kids as well?
Sandra Hill is our guest. We do have a call online. At some point I want to ask you about access and, the sites and whether there are any tips and trips and any devices that make it more difficult. But we'll ask that in a minute. Let's go to the phones though. Good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Very familiar voice.
Yes, good afternoon to Sandra.
How are you?
Also, just fine. Listening on with great interest here. And I have a couple of comments to make. I know it's caught on, and there's a lot of followers, and it's a good thing for a lot of people. I'm really not much interested in that type of thing, but I read my news, and even for instance, people say to me, "Make your saw this on CNN." And I said, "No, they know my point of view." I said, CNN is a very left-wing thing. It's a powerful organization, a very left-wing, so I don't tend to follow them and stuff like that. But There's have you ever heard the old saying, "Let sleeping dogs lie"? Yeah, well, there's a thing to that, you know. And also, there's a powerful, some words said by that great man, Sir Winston Churchill, wasn't Sir at the time, and he said the truth is so precious that one must be prepared to lie to protect it. And it became an important part of his agenda because he realized how important it was sometimes to let people believe that they're listening to the truth when the opposite, it was very necessary to let them believe what he was saying was true. No, because there was a great purpose behind it. The thing is this, there are always people who have certain information. Many times we say, well, they're afraid to say it or what. But there comes a time when you have to realize that revealing that information may do much more harm than good. Much, much more harm. And it can happen. So sometimes we have to be very careful with certain bits of information that we reveal. I know certain things about certain situations that have happened many years ago in Cayman and relating to different aspects of life at different times in history. But it would be best for me to keep that quiet because revealing it may do much more harm than good to the descendants of people now. And I have made that decision quite a while ago. And I'm happy with that because there will come a time in everyone's life, I'm sure you have seen this, when it is best to keep certain information quiet.
Yes, sir.
If we look at things, I'm not talking about murders or something at no time at all or drug dealers. What if we look at our system, we say that over 55% of our economy or GDP, words that are used by people who might even really understand what that really pertains to, because we are a very unique country. As we know, we have no direct income tax, so a lot of information is withheld from the government. Now, our economy, based on it, it's a secret economy. We have to be very factual. There are things that no one wants anyone to know, and it involves millions and millions and millions of dollars. And that's why, if you remember Andy Martin's famous song when he said about Delaware Super Center, when he said, I'll be late, the Englishman was telling him, I don't want to be late for secret conference time. I remember when that was a daily word, when they'd say, well, gentlemen, I have to leave. Secret conference time is coming up. That meant the time when they discuss the secrets. That's now done by apps and whatever, and your cell phones and your laptops and your emails and whatever other things that you utilize in the modern digital world. But that was the idea. Certain things must remain secret, or it can cause the whole thing to fall apart. But there's information on people's lives that if we reveal certain things, it can be much more harmful than good. So we have to come to that realization in life, and I've found that takes age. It takes that one word, age, because the school of life is the greatest school of all schools. We can learn a lot academically in universities, but there are certain things we will not learn, and that is but time teaches us this, and our experience with people with working on different things, that there is a time when revealing certain information can be harmful, and it behooves us to remember this. Thank you so much. I'll listen on. This is one.
All right, darling. Have a good one.
All right, thanks very much for sharing that. And respectfully, let's just pause for 15-minute break here. It won't be 15 minutes long. When we come back, we'll talk today.
Traffic congestion is bad for your mental health, bad for your wallet, and bad for the environment. Alternative commuting habits are the solution. Cycling, walking, busing, or carpooling will help save you money, benefit your health, conserve energy, and help the environment. Do your part. Visit the ministry Facebook page for details of plans for bicycle lanes, the latest bus schedules, and be an energy advocate.
Kick off Constitution Weekend with an exciting international all-star football match that you won't want to miss. Saturday, June 29th at Truman Bodden Sports Complex. Football legends Gianfranco Zola of Italy, Shaka Hislop of Trinidad and Tobago, Ricardo Gardner and Darren Moore of Jamaica, Sean Davis of England, and Pascal Chimbanda of France will join with Jamaica Reggae Boys legends Walter Boyd, Onandi Lowe, and Cayman Islands national team greats Lee Ramone, Gilly Seymour, Antonio Smith, Richard Hugh, and many more. Gates open at 3 p.m. with free admission to the public, and all patrons must be seated no later than 5:30 p.m. when the gates will close. Large bags and glass bottles will not be permitted. This all-star charity football match will feature entertainment at halftime and a donation collection in support of the Hope for Today Foundation. Saturday, June 29th at Truman Bodden Sports Complex. Don't miss as football legends from the UK, the Caribbean, and the Cayman Islands come together to play in this historic match as we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Cayman Islands Constitution. Admission is free. For more information, visit celebratecayman.ky.
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands and sponsored by One Trade X. Join Money Sense Thursday at 7:30 a.m. and email your questions to moneysense at Candiwaki. That's money, SENSE at CANDW.KY. Money Sense, the only personal finance radio show in the Cayman Islands. Brought to you with the support of One Trade X.
Did you know that once properly sanitized, some tinned food items may still be safe for consumption after coming in contact with floodwater? In order to properly sanitize these tins, always remove labels and then wash tins in a strong detergent solution using a brush to get rid of excess impurities. Tins must then be immersed in a solution made of 2 tablespoons of chlorine bleach per gallon of water for 10 minutes. Ensure that containers are air dried before opening. For more post-hurricane food safety tips, visit the DEH website at deh.gov.ky.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks so much for joining us. And in the studio, Sandra Hill is our guest. 949-8837 or 949-6990 if you want to join the discussion. Likewise, you can WhatsApp 925-3261 or call us toll free 1-800-534-8255. Just before the break, and thanks for letting us take our break. Our sales department, they work extremely hard. So
I know.
Thanks to our sponsors. I don't know. We got more bills than anyways. The caller prior will make some comments. I got a WhatsApp to share with you as well. But
okay. The interesting, Mr. Mickey mentioned about letting sleeping dogs lie. And that's a very interesting phrase and a very interesting concept that dates back to, we know in written form, back to the 1300s. Geoffrey Chaucer was one of the first people to use that in one of his literary works. So it is a phrase I'm very familiar with, and it's interesting, but we can say that about a lot of things, and we can see how sometimes letting a sleeping dog lie only leads to further issues down the line that for many generations have gone unaddressed. So one of the sleeping dogs that we have allowed to lie in this community very comfortably, unfortunately, is the whole issue of child molestation. We let that sleeping dog lie all the time. because we know who those people are. Historically, we've known who they've been for generations. And like he said, because we're trying to protect family members or we're trying to protect certain people in society who have a certain position, we won't talk about the fact that they're known child molesters and that they're families who from one generation to the next have perpetrated the abuse of their own children and their own family members because no one dared to speak out and say enough is enough. So letting sleeping dogs lie isn't always the best method. And it's certainly not the approach that Cayman Mall Road has taken, as most people can see. If you want an issue to not be addressed, then obviously you don't bring it to the Mall Road, because we're about putting it out there and letting the people use their good judgment and their good common sense to decipher from there, what's going on. And the tide has changed as a result of that. And sometimes it is very, very subtle in terms of how it's changing and how it's happening. So recently, for example, we saw, we don't know whether to call it a homicide or what the situation is, but we saw our first violent death of 2019. So we almost made it through almost 7 months with no sort of incident that led to someone's demise in that sense, right? And obviously we had some sources that were very close to both parties providing information. So we can't make a judgment call on what transpired because we simply don't know. So we put both stories out there. And I do notice that another print media, when they ran the story, that their reporter went and spoke to the neighbor of the person, of this, where this incident took place. And the neighbor shared with them that, hey, the female in this instance, the first thing she said to them, or one of the first things she said, is that this person essentially committed suicide. And so that was printed in their newspaper, that this neighbor had this story. And I think years ago, they probably would not have even gone to the neighbor to try to get these types of bits and pieces of information to include in their story. They would have just done the cookie cutter, this person is now deceased and the police investigating it, and that was it. But people do want to know more, and people are very engaged in the process. And, I've got one person who's a very avid CMR follower. And the thing that she always says is everybody loves Mall Road until they're mentioned on it because of something that they've done or their family members or whatever. But they're always the first ones jumping on there to catch the latest news and see what's going on. And then, when something gets a little bit too close to home, then it becomes an issue of, they're up in everybody's business and, they're a horrible format and they're not doing a good job for the community. And, you get all this criticism. But oftentimes those are the first persons who you'll find going to Mall Road for news and gossip, and kind of like, it's almost like a hidden secret. Like they don't want other people to know, well, I actually really enjoy reading the Mall Road, or that's where I go, whether I enjoy it or not. I mean, I know who would torture themselves if they don't enjoy it, but, and I always tell people, Sterling, it's all about choice. You don't have to go to Mall Road's Facebook page. You can unfollow a page, you can unlike a page, you can even block a page so that you never see any of their stuff come up on your wall. You don't have to go to the website. So media is media of your choice. Like, I am not particularly interested in Fox News. So I seldom ever turn on the TV and watch Fox News because I have a choice. I can watch what I want on TV. And so this isn't something that is being forced upon you and that you don't have a choice with. You have more than ample opportunity to utilize other news resources here in the island. The Compass has a very traditional format. They've been known as being very safe news and covering certain things. A lot of Caymanians have felt like under their last management that they were very anti-Caymanian. That was an opinion that was pretty broad out there in the public, especially with a lot of the editorials and stuff that they had written that were seen to be very critical of the people of the Cayman Islands. For a while, they got into a little bit of hot water, even with the Cayman Islands government. And their advertising, was pulled from the Compass. They shortly kissed and made up, and it was, back to the same bad behaviors or whatever. But, people see them as being, extremely safe in terms of how they tend to report things. There are people who don't like CNS, who think and, say all sorts of things about Wendy being in collusion with different people. And they've questioned, well, who really, owns CNS? And, Wendy takes a certain position on topics that they wonder about. And, you recognize very quickly when you get into this space, people are always going to criticize. But what I know is the vast majority of people really appreciate the efforts that you put out there. And it's not about agreeing with every single thing you share or you post, but holistically speaking, they see the vision and they see where you're going with this. And the fact that we have 14,000 people on one of our social media platforms and another 5,300 on another, I think clearly demonstrates that, you know, regardless of what people want to say, people are engaged and they're tuned in and they want to know. And I don't make up this information. I don't get details from out of thin air. People provide us with the stories, with the details, with the photos, with the, you know, it's almost like a community newspaper. And a lot of people don't like that because sometimes that means that your business is going to be out there. If you have an accident on the street, people are going to take a photo of it and they're going to put it out there. But we're not the only platform that's happening on. There's an excellent IG page, which I want to mention some of these pages because they do a good job. It's called 360 Cayman. I don't actually even know who's behind the IG page, but they often share a lot of photos of like car accidents and stuff like that as well. There's Cayman's worst parking. So they're going to take pictures of people who are parked in like handicap zones or parked, you know, over in the line. There's another one, Cayman's worst driving. So it's like the community of people are putting together these social media platforms, pages and whatever, and they put it out there. It's just that Mall Road pulls from a lot of different sources in order to put our post out.
Is that then part of the challenge that the world has changed? The way news is being delivered to you. The Columbia Journal Review, we're seeing different approaches to how do you monetize certain things, but how do you reach your audience? Now, in the Cayman context, because it's changing, as a populace, we're not able to understand it, appreciate it. We don't want to keep up with it. We don't want to deal with it. All of a sudden, you're getting quote-unquote news in a format that isn't the Sunday newspaper. Right. It isn't the 6 o'clock Radio Cayman news only. It's this other thing.
And it's often very instantaneous. I mean, one of the things that, historically speaking, there was a couple commissioners ago, a couple police commissioners, where they used to name when people got arrested, they would say so-and-so got arrested. Then they changed their minds. And it was just a very arbitrary change. A lot of people don't seem to remember this. And they stopped naming people. So there is no fast rule about who you name in the media when someone is arrested versus when they're charged or when they're convicted. It's up to the individual media houses. And some of them exercise a very wishy-washy policy where you can't seem to tell, you know, what one child molester gets named, another one doesn't. And it gets very confusing in terms of how it's done. Right. There's no level of consistency. What Cayman Mall Road has attempted to do, in as much as possible, every single person who we can ascertain who they are at the time of arrest, it is a matter of public record. And so we simply put the name out there. It's listed on their website anyway. All you have to do is go to judicial.ky. And once your case file is headed to court, your name, your docket number, what you're being, you know, put before the court for is all on there. It's a public record. Right. Why people get upset about something that's already in the public domain?
What about the pictures of people? And I want, if you would, indulge us when we come back from our news break, talk more about this naming. Because if we watch, let's say, in U.S. media, we'll see it, you know, so-and-so. And it doesn't matter if the person is a politician or some practitioner in the medical field.
In fact, they name people before they're even arrested. They name people who are wanted for questioning, who are a person of interest.
Yeah.
And they're named and they're photos put out there. But here it's only done, the police only utilize it, and they're a bit shady too in how they decide to approach this, because they only utilize it when it's important to help them try to catch someone. You know, so there are a lot of people out there that they're looking for and they're not really too bothered. But if it's a high profile case, you remember with Jeffrey Barnes, after he had raped a ton of women and then he was still on the loose, it was getting to a critical stage because he was still attacking, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we have a serial sexual predator on the loose. We need the public's help. Here's his photo. Here's his information. Women could have been saved from being assaulted had the police had the approach that, you know what, anyone that's wanted from day one, we're going to put it out there. They waited until 2 or 3 victims later. You know, is that even fair to the community?
You referenced earlier, and maybe when you come back and clarify is there a law that says, because the question we receive off here is, well, is the law says you can't name someone until after they're convicted or until they're charged? You're saying it's just a policy and a practice depending on who is at the helm at the time.
Yeah. So there is no law. There's
so
no law in place.
If you want to say this about that one, okay. Once they're charged, doesn't matter? Arrested?
Nope. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. All right. Well, when we come back, let's talk more about that. We invite you to call and share your thoughts if you so choose. 949-8837 or 949-6990.
Radio K-Man.
Radio K-Man's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
The Cayman Islands ball hockey team wins the World Championships in Slovakia. Cayman's men's world ball hockey team went undefeated in group play to advance to the World Championship A pool for the first time in the 8 years of World Championship play. It was a fight to the very end. Thanks to Team Cayman's past 6 wins and current record 6-2, they advanced to the gold medal game and a second try against Great Britain to bring home the gold. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, the suspected ringleader of Saturday's failed coup attempt in Ethiopia's Amhara region has been shot dead, police say. General Asamenu Siege was killed as he attempted to escape from his hideout in Amhara's capital, police added. Ethiopia's army chief general, Ser Mekonnen, was killed while trying to foil the coup, the government said. Muslim women in France are disobeying the rules at a local swimming pool by wearing burkinis. In a protest inspired by U.S. civil rights pioneer Rosa Parks, they bathed in suits covering their entire bodies apart from the face, hands and feet in the city of Grenoble on Sunday. The Jean Brun swimming pool is among many in France that ban burkinis. And Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo have been announced as the hosts of the 2026 Winter Olympics and Paralympics. The International Olympic Committee voted for Italy's joint bid ahead of Stockholm, Sweden. Skating sports and ice hockey will be held in Milan, while most alpine skiing events will take place in the resort of Cortina. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio K-Man, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio K-Man is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio K-Man.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And in the studio, as we have a chance to continue discussion with Miss Sandra Hill, and we're talking about the media, but Cayman Road, you says. Happy second birthday on Saturday.
Yes.
I'm going to have cake and ice cream.
Who knows? All
right.
So just to kind of follow up, Sterling, and where we were leaving off. So I think someone had asked about legislation. So there is no legislation in place that offers any guidance or anything else in terms of when someone is named in the process. And like we said, you know, in different jurisdictions, it's handled even before the person's arrested, which is, quite interesting. But we've seen in some instances here in the Cayman Islands where sometimes the police, if they need your help, will name someone of interest before they are in custody, before they're officially arrested, because they want that person. So they'll put out their photo and all sorts of details about them. So it's a bit interesting that, you can use a method when it's beneficial to you. What we have attempted to do as a policy across the board is if the information is available, if the name of the person's available and a photograph of the person, because we do have a lot of Caymanians with the same name, so that no one has any doubt about who it is, we just put the information out there at the earliest stage. So in other words, when they are arrested by police. Now, people have been arrested just like I've been arrested 4 or 5 times. I kind of lost count. And I've never been...
You sit on a barge one?
I've never been convicted of anything. I've never been found guilty of anything. All of my cases were actually thrown out at the earliest possible stage. So I've never even had to put on a defense.
So just people listening, being arrested is different from being charged.
Exactly.
Being charged different from being convicted.
Exactly.
But you were arrested in relation to media stuff, not, your arrests are...
No, this was all sorts of stuff. Yeah, nothing to do with anything with the media. This was like, the first case was dog theft, alleged dog theft. Do you not remember the dog that they claimed that I stole?
I forgot that.
There was a nation building case. There was a ton of cases that were all over the place. It was like
yeah. Actually, I forgot.
Easy. It is easy sometimes to forget. But my point is this. There is a stigma attached to when you get arrested here that shouldn't be.
Okay.
So by naming people at that earliest possible stage, and then we update people, they've been charged, they have gone to court, this was the outcome, they've been found not guilty or whatever. Mm-hmm. In truth, we are trying, and it's hard for people to understand when they're arrested, but we are trying to remove the stigma and to allow people to understand being arrested essentially means nothing, except that the police believe they may have a case. They haven't yet decided, because they don't decide that until they charge you. So they arrest you on suspicion, that's why they do it this way, of XYZ. So when you're arrested on suspicion of something, it doesn't even mean that you're going to get charged. You're simply arrested.
Yeah.
Then they go away and they do an investigation. Questionable how proper it's done. It depends on who's doing it. And then they decide whether to charge you. Some charges follow very, very quickly after an arrest, and others will take forever. Like, one of the problems that I always had personally is I would always say, why is it taking you so long to charge me? If you've arrested me, in my mind, you should know where you're going with this case. You should have your witness statements in order. You should have all of this stuff, because I have a right to try to get on with my life.
Justice deleted, justice denied.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I would say, bring the case. As soon as you arrest me, charge me. Let's get to court.
Okay.
That was my position.
I want to ask you about, I want to read a couple of comments from our listeners. I want to ask you about something I saw in the news just recently. I'm just trying to see. But let's go to our phones.
Okay.
Our guest, Miss Sandra Hill. Good afternoon, welcome. You want to talk today?
Hi.
Afternoon. How are you?
Fine.
Good afternoon.
I would like to say something to Miss Catherine.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that her family she's talking about? Born?
And
I can't. You hear the call?
She said if that's not my family I'm talking about. Yeah, no. I mean, I'm impartial if nothing. Okay. So yes, he is a family member, and
Is the call? I can't hear the call.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a great question. I want to thank her for asking that, because this is something that I've always said. Just like when I have been in a position where I've gotten arrested, I'm always the first to let the media know. Because again, there's no shame in it, especially from my perspective, because I know I haven't done anything wrong.
Okay.
So Barnes, everybody I think in Cayman knows that I'm related to the Barneses. The vast majority of them, because my grandfather, who was the first person in Cayman to have school buses, he brought the whole business of school buses to the Cayman Islands, we're all related in some form or another. So most Barneses that you see here, there has been another Barnes that has come from Jamaica that isn't directly related to us, but pretty much all the Barneses are related. So yes, Jeffrey Barnes is a cousin. And what does that mean? I still report on him. I still call him out. I'll still post his name, and I'll still post his picture. I don't have any favor for anyone just because they're family. There have been other family members who I've reported on and I've highlighted their stuff, and they felt because I was family that I should have done that. And I said, how can I do that? How can I not be impartial? I've been impartial with myself and my own business. So by right, if I'm putting everybody else's information out there, even if you're family, you don't get any special compensation or consideration just because we're related. The truth is the truth. And if you've been arrested, then it is what it is.
All right. Let me ask then a couple of things. And I hear where you're sharing, and I'm looking at the Cayman context. And I've looked at some media sort of in our discussion, because I think that, was it the media considered the fourth estate? A strong, independent, credible media is important. to keeping the society in check, informing the people and the like. I don't know if I said most guys didn't do a study. Well, let me phrase it. Most of the homes I went to recently, I asked them, do you have TV? What kind of TV do you have? Where do you get your sort of news, TV news? And a lot of the channels are out of Miami, I think, for some of the households. And so they flicked it on, the news is on, the TV news. And there was a case, there was a story on the news out of Miami, some doctor, chiropractor, massage therapist, some sort of person. His name was there. They interviewed him. He's been arrested in these allegations of, and then the newscasters say, well, there may be other victims out there, so come forward, and so on. And I thought, I say that to read these multiple comments within the Cayman context that says that, in Cayman, if you start to, have this practice of identifying people before the process is even started and complete, then maybe people can be assumed to be guilty, and that in the Cayman context could just destroy a person, right? Another one shares that if you look at how we do it in Cayman, is that challenging, and could that lead to more scandal and vindictiveness? Could that lead to people being ostracized and just being assumed, yep, they're guilty, we saw it in the media, so therefore?
Well, like I said, it was only recently that the police themselves started not naming people who were arrested. So it's almost like people don't seem to remember that. So we've just reverted back to what used to be an old police policy anyway. At the end of the day, people need to, and this is where removing the stigma from that is important. The only way that you're going to actually remove the stigma is to simply put the information out there. So with the exception of minor children, there's certain people who obviously have some protection under the law. Sexual assault victims, for example. And if the court specifically says there's a gag order in place, right, because it might impede the investigation. Other than that, people need to recognize that there is significant value in simply having the information out in the public forum without you jumping to the assumption that someone is guilty or otherwise. Because on a daily basis, there are people who go through the court system who walk away who were actually guilty, and vice versa. So just because the outcome favors them or favors the prosecution, that doesn't even mean that that is the true position or the true case. Someone's life will still be ruined because they were found guilty and they're actually innocent. We just saw a man who spent 39 years in the U.S., and he's actually the longest serving so far person that has been exonerated after serving, time in jail, exonerated for a crime that he didn't commit. And he walked away after 39 years. Only got $1 million, by the way, for being wrongfully convicted. And you could say, well, was his life ruined? I mean, the end result was he was convicted. And everybody, I'm sure, up until the point that he was exonerated, may have thought that he was guilty.
All right. Final break. When we come back, we take some more calls, invite those listening. Hey, thanks, for your time, Ms. Sandra Hill.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Discover your purpose. Unleash your potential with U.S. Grammy-nominated gospel singer and motivational speaker, 22-year-old Jacqueline Carr, and local youth talent at Gospel Fest 2019. Lion Center, Sunday, June 30th, 6:30 p.m. Tickets $15 pre-sold. Performing Billboard hits, You're Bigger, and You Will Win. Jacqueline Carr at Gospel Fest 2019. You can't afford to miss it. Tickets available at the following outlets: Cayman Islands Conference, ABNC, ValueMed Pharmacy, Christian Enlightenment Center, Bellagio Salon and Spa, Campbell's Auto Repairs and Sales, Funky Tangs Limited, the Physiotherapy Center, Rankins Plaza, Shop number 11, Plaza Venezia, North Sound Road.
At Flow, we know that 4 are better than 1. Introducing Flow Quad Play. Packed with the fastest, most reliable broadband, the power and control of Flow Evo TV, Cayman's best mobile experience, and tons of home phone minutes, all in one convenient package from only $199 a month. With 4 plans to choose from, you're sure to find one that fits your needs. It's value, ease, and convenience all on one bill with Cayman's #1 network. Find out why 4 are better than 1 with Flow Quad Play at discoverflow.ky. Terms and conditions apply.
June 26th is International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. Did you know that use of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs begin in adolescence? Studies show that the brain doesn't stop developing until the age of 25. So, kids, don't harm yourself by putting alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs in your body. This message is brought to you by the National Drug Council and Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today in the studio. As we speak with Miss Sandra Hill, she reminds us it may not be no kick in the screen, but come Saturday, so the 29th of June is the anniversary for Kimama Road. 2 years?
2 years. Went by really fast.
All right, I'll ask you more, but we do have a call though, Miss Sandra. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon again, Sterling Green. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Welcome back again, sir.
Yes, I would hate for anyone to misunderstand when I call in and give an opinion. Why I say what I say. Sometimes it's easy to misunderstand or misinterpret. I'm not talking about, I didn't call about child molestation cases to hide them. We have one that was well hidden from 1920 or 1980, and you're just talking about wrongfully accused. So if you know about that one, the incident of that 12-year-old girl that was found murdered, head bashed in by a rock on the iron shore out there, just north of Lower Valley there, going towards east. I mean, but that it went hushed up because it and who got the blame for it was a lowly black East Ender, and he suffered being incarcerated in prison in Jamaica and died from the cold cell from pneumonia. And so I think in much later years, her family, she was exonerated and they were given a posthumous apology or whatever it was. And all those kinds of things we can dig up, but nobody is digging up those things in here, because my mother remembered seeing her very well when they were carrying her on the cart with her hands tied behind her back, standing up all the way from East End, just from, and saying, "The one that find her, kill her." Good. And those things, and it's important, our history, we leave it left aside. But what I'm talking about is when I say it's best to let sleeping dogs lie, it's not just about the people being arrested or anything like that, but there are certain issues, certain things that happened, certain even transactions that it's best for the general public under certain circumstances and in certain cases that apply to those things. It's best to let the truth remain hid, and it might do much more damage to the to everyone and to the country if certain things are known. We have the classic case of the Tempura thing. We still do not know anything about it. A lot of money has been spent.
Fair enough. Well, that's a perspective, sir. Anything else you want to share with us?
Something very quickly.
Yes, sir.
We have a lot of unsolved murders here in Cayman. We have a lot for a little place, 58,000 acres or whatever we are. It's mostly in Grand Cayman. What is being done? What is being put to the public about these things? People have come forward in many instances with information and so forth. But it's an alarming thing. We have a lot of unsolved murder cases here, and you know it, Dwayne.
Yes, sir.
And Chandra, I'm sure you know that also. We do have, and it's a very serious thing. What is being done about it? Is anyone questioning it? And so forth, and what is happening there. But as I said before, sometimes it's important for people to decipher and sieve out whether revealing certain information, I'm not talking about murders and whether certain information might be much more damaging to reveal it than to just keep it quiet. That's why I said, let sleeping dogs lie. I have done so for many, many, many years now for certain things that took place because I realized it would be detrimental to a lot if I was to speak the truth.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing. Sandra, in reporting the news, not just a historical record, but things that are happening now. So whether it's government, not speaking to the Cayman context, just generally speaking. So a political administration, whether it's the top within the country, whether it's a local government, whether it's an appointed board or something. So something's happening, and people know it's happening. Some media outlets would jump on it right away. Some will, here's the facts. Some will give it a slant, depending on the objective, because that's seemingly how people are these days. We don't always want it objective. You decide. In the Cayman context, where are we?
I mean, I think it definitely depends on who you're speaking to on any given day. So, a couple of weeks ago, we saw this article that came out in CNS that said that no politicians went to this anti-corruption seminar that they had. And I found that very peculiar. So I started asking some questions. And I reached out in particular to opposition members and said, why wouldn't you have gone to this? And then what we really figured out, which Cayman Mall Road was the only one to have gotten that right, is that they weren't actually invited. So there was some mix-up with the office who was responsible for sending out those invitations, sending an invite to a government address, which exists for all members of the LA, but they don't have access to. And so they never got the invite. So when we email that government agency to say, okay, are you sure that you invited them? And if so, and then once they started digging a little bit, they realized that a mistake had been made. And people make mistakes, And the corrected story was actually ran to say this is actually what transpired. They issued an apology. And then...
How many of us realize that happened? We say, oh, yeah, they didn't go.
Yeah.
That's what many people...
And for whatever reason, Wendy decided that she wasn't going to publish a retraction of the story. She didn't do a new story. And I haven't actually looked at the story itself to see if she corrected it, like in the body, to say, that the anti-corruption office or secretariat or whatever came back and said this is what transpired. But, you could equally argue that in the moment that made the elected officials look really bad because none of them attended this seminar. And then you find out that at least a good almost half of them actually weren't invited. And then that begs some other questions to be asked, like why would members of the LA have a government email address that they have no access to? It shouldn't even exist, or it should be sending an auto reply back to say, yes, this person's a member of the LA, but they're not going to receive this message. So you need to reach out to them through their official opposition office or some other email contact. So people don't like it when you stir the pot. People don't like it when you ask questions. We know this. And this isn't something that particularly bothers us. But the vast majority of the people see the value in it because it's kind of one of those situations where one day it's going to be your time when you're going to want someone to stir the pot on a particular issue. For example, right now we have people who are incarcerated, who are in jail. We would have reported on probably a few of them with the fact that they were incarcerated, the facts of their case, maybe even put up their picture. They're now reaching out to Cayman Mall Road because they feel like in the prison system, they are being victimized. Their basic human rights, and they're having issues that are happening whilst they're incarcerated. So now it's their turn. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to get over the fact that maybe they were insulted when we carried the story about them and put up their picture. Because like one of them said to me, you're the only media outlet we feel that, number one, we can trust, and number two, who's going to give us a voice and that people are actually going to listen to.
So is that a challenge then, just collectively speaking, as a society? We're okay with the good, but the bad and the ugly we don't want to talk about.
Always.
And
yeah, I mean, that's always the case. And, you know, when it's your turn to either be a victim or on the other side, you will view what we do very, very differently. So if you need us, if you've been victimized and something has happened to you, quickly you will reach out and say, I need your help because nobody's listening to me. You know, my case is with the police. They're not doing anything, et cetera, et cetera. We get those kind of requests all the time. But just because you've been featured because you've been arrested, you know, you're offended. But we didn't lie. Were you arrested? You know, people share stuff on social media, Sterling. They will put up pictures and photographs and video and all this kind of stuff, right? They'll share it and they'll put it out there, or they're in the public when something happens and someone else records it. And then they're going to tell you that they're entitled to some measure of privacy. I'm like, okay, if you go out in public and you drink in public, you become belligerent in public. Sorry. You get in a fight in public, you do whatever that makes someone else want to record your actions in public, and then that goes viral or that's shared. You don't have anybody to blame for that but yourself. You know, if you decide to do something in public, it's fair game. And these are the rules by which we operate. International media, just last week, we saw, I forget what his name is. Is it Gooding Jr. or whatever?
Some celebrity got,
Cuba
Gooding,
Yeah, he got arrested for potentially touching a woman in a public place, and it was caught on video camera. It was obvious that he was intoxicated. The cameras could see that he touched her on her breast and he touched her on her leg and so on, and she moved away. And the cameras also show that within short order, she went and reported it to the management of that establishment, and the police were called. The man had no choice but to turn himself in because the cameras caught everything. So I think people need to be mindful of, number one, when something happens in public, whether you get in a car accident or you do something or whatever, you don't have any right to privacy any longer. If you're doing it in the confines of your own home and you're not breaking the law where the public, like services, 911, police, etc., have to then get involved, then that's a matter for you. But even in your own home, there are rules that govern what you can't and can't do. So a couple of weeks ago, there was this big thing that got a lot of Cayman's elite and wealthy up in arms because we reported about a young girl who is part of that particular privileged portion of the community who drank to excess, where she had alcohol poisoning and had to be taken by ambulance to the hospital. The second they had to pick up the phone and call 911 to save her life, it becomes a matter of public interest. And then we had parents who reached out to us who were saying, wow, this is the first time it's gotten this bad, but this is indicative of a broader problem. This is indicative of parents who are giving children alcohol at will at functions. This is indicative of school administrators who know that children will have drugs and alcohol and other things on school property and who turn a blind eye. And so there's a bigger question here of whether or not if you are privileged in Cayman, and if your privilege comes about because of whether it's who you are, the money that you have, whatever, if you get a different set of rules by which you operate, and we see it happening all the time, right? And people don't like to be called out on those types of things. So people don't like their dirty laundry to be aired. And to a certain extent, Mall Road does that. We air Cayman's dirty laundry because it's on the Mall Road. It's what people are talking about. It's topical. People are talking about it regardless. It's just not in a format where it's in writing or the video is being shared, that sort of thing. And when it goes to that level, that's what appears to make people uncomfortable.
So the Mall Road of yesteryear, where we talked about it, is the Mall Road today, digitized video, live in stereo, the whole thing.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, would you accept another invite to come on again?
Absolutely. You know, I'm always game for it. I'm always game for it. And, we have our critics, and I actually want to thank those people because your critics force you to examine your behavior, which we do. And we look at our policies, and we always try to be consistent with what we do. So we don't really play favorites. Whether you're someone of means, whether you're the president of a company and you have been terminated, we're going to put that out there. We were the first ones to break the story that Mr. Erman Williams from CNB was terminated. Mr. Williams is now obviously suing CNB, claiming wrongful termination. The fact that he's terminated doesn't mean that he has done anything wrong. And this is, again, that stigma that you have to remove when you're reporting this story. He was terminated. He was a well-liked individual. And we heard what the Mall Road was saying, that it was in direct relation to the takeover by a foreign entity and the fact that he may not have been 100% supportive of that move. And that's the real reason why he was terminated. We can only tell you what's on the Mall Road. But I can tell you that just like in other instances, people say, you know what, the Mall Road's 100% spot on. The people who are in the know precisely what's going on. And there's no need to try to, hide information. We had another situation with an elderly man, as you'll remember, who attacked his wife. And everyone was like, how is this possible? This man, you see him, he always looks so meek and so humble and whatever. But the details of what we reported, and I'm going to say this as frankly as I can. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the details of what was reported about him, probably just because he's an older man and they had an impression of him that isn't necessarily the reality. But a lot of the detailed information, there are people who were very close to the victim who wanted that information out there, despite what other people thought. They were like, oh, Mall Road just put out too much information. We did it for a reason, because people who were very close to him and close to the victim wanted the general public to know what appears to be isn't always the case. And when one of his children went to court, it was overheard in court. Another media outlet was saying, Cayman Mall Road reported that really this was a violent act because she denied him sex, which was the truth. And the DPP's office was overheard talking to another media outlet. And they said, you know what? Every single thing Mall Road has provided in terms of information was spot on. We don't even know how they got the information, but they're 100% correct. And there were people who were very close to her who initially were questioning if those were the events because they didn't know. And she was so badly physically damaged by it that it even impaired her memory. So she may not, have been the best to kind of come back and say XYZ. But this wasn't the first rodeo for him. So people who you see, are involved in violent attacks and stuff, they may have a history. They may have just never been arrested in his 80 plus years. But that doesn't mean that this is a man who is a wonderful man and has never done anything like beat his wife or abuse his wife in the past. And so this is where the level of honesty sometimes makes us uncomfortable as a community, because we don't want to think that about some little old man who's lived amongst us for all of these years. We don't want to think that an 80-something-year-old man who has molested a child is getting away with it because the courts have decided, oh, he's too old to go to jail, despite sexually molesting an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old or whatever. But we put the stories out there. And there was one in last week's news with a brother, half-sibling, right, accused of sexually molesting his stepsister. And what I wish the media would do in cases like this, instead of reporting on the relationship between the parties, especially when it comes to sexual abuse, leave out the fact that she's a stepsister. We don't need to know that information, because we could have phrased it in such a way where, more importantly, who he is, because he's a predator, allegedly, who he is becomes more important than his relationship to her. So we could have left out the fact that they're half siblings and just say that he's being accused of molesting someone multiple times. And that way we still get to protect her identity, which is important as a victim, but that then allows us to name who he is. But you see, the media never did that. And we know who he is at Cayman Mall Road, but now we can't put it out there. We can't name him because there's this competing story which has already identified the victim as his stepsister.
Yeah. Sandra, you know what? Like you said at the beginning, someone love it.
Yeah, and we don't get insulted if you don't like Cayman Mall Road. Like I tell people all the time, it's not a big deal. The world isn't going to end because you don't like Mall Road. There are other choices out there for you, and you get to choose. This is where freedom comes in. Mm-hmm. You get to choose what media house you prefer, what media house you'd like to visit, what media house you'd like to read. We don't make any money yet, I should say, off of Cayman Mall Road. It has really been a labor of love. It's not something that we do because of any financial gain.
All right. Talk to you again another time. Enjoy your
Sounds good.
Your afternoon.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Sandra Catron. It's I look at our society and I think every day, we got to work increasingly hard to make sure that we protect and preserve what we have here. Mm-hmm. To our listeners, tomorrow evening, tomorrow 9 to 3, go up to the Seafarers Hall. Be a part of what they have to offer us. We want you to come back, of course, for Talk Today after the midday news, but you can do both. Until tomorrow, be blessed.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.